Hello, 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 everyone, and good morning. Welcome to episode 23 of Survivor Strong, the podcast for all survivors of childhood trauma. Of course, I'm Yvonne Sandomir. I'm really excited to have you here today. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I had intended to just speak from the heart and tell my story from childhood on. But I realized that might be a little bit difficult for me to do and stay on track. So I've decided that I'm actually going to read from my book instead. So today I'm taking you way, way back to my early childhood. And I guess we can just start from there. We will start with We'll start from chapter 1 of my book, and go through um, my until 10 years old, and then we'll go from there. We might have to stop a little bit sooner, depending on our time. But I'm so happy to have you here. Hi, Judy. Welcome today. Hi, Matt. Thank you for being here. So I'm just going to start from halfway through chapter 1. In May of 2015, Gavin, my husband of 2 short months, sat at the foot of the bed with the phone in his hand. He was casual in his black basketball shorts and rock, paper, scissors Spock t-shirt. The worried expression on his face didn't match the bright sunny day we were having. Instead, it matched the darkness of the sunny day. It matched the darkness of the hideous light brown walls and lack of sunlight from our white blackout curtains. Gavin sat at his desk in the bedroom and took a deep breath before speaking. Yvonne, you need to see a therapist. Why are you doing this to me? I snapped. Because I love you, that's why. Gavin, I don't need therapy. I promise I can do this on my own. But Gavin wouldn't budge. Instead, he positioned himself next to me on the bed, brushed away a strand of hair away from my eyes, wrapped his arms around me, and pulled me in closer. Sweetie, you deserve to get help for yourself. After what I saw a couple of months ago, you need to talk to someone. I didn't want to hear a word he was saying. The idea of seeing a therapist terrified me, but Gavin wouldn't give up on me. Yvonne, something is haunting you. You scream in the middle of the night, you cry uncontrollably, and you've barely been out of this bedroom in months. It's just not healthy for you. As your husband, it's my duty to take care of you, so please let me do that. He stood up to grab a piece of paper from the printer and held it out to me. Here, please take a look at this. What is it? Irritated, I tore the paper from his hand. Please, just trust me and look. Gavin had been insisting I go to therapy ever since that call with my mom. I gave him one scathing look before I agreed to take the paper. When I realized it was a list of potential therapists, a deep, involuntary sigh escaped my body. I barely had the energy to sit up, but I threw my favorite purple plush blanket aside, revealing the same gray joggers and light blue tank top I'd worn for days, and quickly browsed the list. The impending dread of starting therapy made me nauseous. Shame rushed through my body at the realization that I was not the same woman Gavin fell in love with back in October 2012. When we met, I was at the height of my sales career and dressed in designer clothes every day. My hair and makeup were on point, and you'd hardly see me without a smile on my face. I'd been divorced from my first husband, Brent, for about 4 years and shared custody of our 2 daughters, Ashley and Claire. Now, just 3 years into our relationship and 2 months after our fairy tale wedding, I'd become increasingly helpless and weak. I fell into a deep, dark rabbit hole of deeply intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, and night terrors so vivid I'd wake myself in the middle of the night screaming and crying. At my rock bottom, I realized I couldn't claw myself back to the top alone, and Gavin came through with the support that I needed. He spent hours preparing the list of therapists' names, addresses, and even included their photos. I scrolled down the list a couple of times before stopping at a photo of an attractive female therapist named Laura. She had long blonde hair and a welcoming smile. I pointed to her picture. "Let's try her," I mumbled. I'd never met her, but I already felt a connection. "Are you sure?" Gavin asked. After a brief pause, I nodded and gave Gavin the permission he'd been begging me to give. He walked back to his desk to retrieve his phone. My heart pounded as he dialed the number. He gently placed the phone on the desk and pressed the speaker button. It rang 3 times before the messaging system picked up. "You've reached my confidential voicemail. Please leave a message and I'll call you back," said a gentle voice, but I still trembled as Gavin prepared to leave a message. "Hello, my name is Gavin, and I'm calling to make an appointment for my wife, Yvonne. Please call us back at your earliest convenience." Gavin repeated our phone number and hung up. I let out a deep sigh, relieved that she didn't answer. I fell back onto my pillow and pulled my trusty purple blanket up to my chest. At least I tried. I secretly hoped she wouldn't call back, but within minutes, that hope shattered at the sound of Gavin's phone ringing. Gavin answered quickly, mouthed to me, "It's Laura," and my heart sank. He put the phone back on the desk and put the call on speaker. "How can I help you?" Laura asked. "I need to make an appointment for my wife," Gavin explained. "Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on?" "I'm not sure. A few weeks ago, she fell into a trance and said some disturbing things." "What did she say?" Laura asked. "She said she was molested and no one protected her. She also said that someone raped her more than once as a kid. It was horrible." "What did you do?" Laura asked. Gavin shrugged. "I tried my best to comfort her. I just hugged her until it was over." "Is Yvonne there now?" "Yes, she's here." "The call is on the speaker. I don't know if she will talk to you, but I'll try." Gavin pushed the phone closer to me, pleading with his eyes. "She needs to talk to you, honey." I felt the pressure building inside my chest as I once again tossed my blanket aside and moved to sit with my legs dangling over the edge of the bed. My head fell into my hands. Fuck! I'm not ready for this. I took a deep breath and quietly spoke into the air. "Hello?" "Hi, my name is Laura. Can you tell me what's going on?" I looked at Gavin nervously and shrugged. "I don't even know where to begin." "I don't know. I'm just not feeling like myself," I said. "I'm sad, I cry all the time, and I've lost all ambition. I feel overwhelmed and lost." "I'm glad you called me, Yvonne. That was very brave of you." "I didn't even make the call," I snapped back. "Well, you're talking to me now, and that's all that matters. I'd like to see you as soon as possible. Can you come in tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I looked at Gavin, wanting to answer no, but I knew he already cleared his calendar for the day. "Yes." "Good. I'm looking forward to meeting you. Can I give the phone back to Gavin now?" I asked rudely. "Yes, I'll give him the address. Thank you again. I'll see you tomorrow." After that first call with Laura, Gavin sat next to me on the bed and took me into his arms, his broad shoulders and chest protecting me. I nuzzled my face closer to him and took a deep breath. "I'm proud of you, sweetie," he said. "I know that wasn't easy." "I don't want to go," I groaned. "I know, but it's going to be good for you," he reminded me. Easier said than done, but I know I have to break down to break through, so at least I'm halfway there. I've got the breaking down part. Now I just need to break through. Gavin smiled down at me and kissed my forehead. I realized I needed his permission to take this time to focus on myself and get the help that I needed. But the idea of reliving my past terrified me. I already felt guilty about my depression and worried. What if therapy makes me feel worse? Gavin became my rock, my support, my source of light, happiness, and comfort. He selfishly and genuinely loved me, which was something I'd never experienced. It was the first time I'd ever felt safe and secure or trusted anyone to do what was in my best interest. I wanted to give up on life, but Gavin wouldn't let me. He saw that I could no longer brush the pain aside and put on a happy face. I knew the pain was so poignant and agonizing I could no longer ignore it. Deep down, I knew I needed support. even if I didn't want to admit it. I was not a functioning, healthy adult. I stopped showering, brushing my teeth, changing clothes, or taking care of basic needs for days at a time. I didn't drive, shop, cook, clean, keep up with laundry, or engage in ordinary, everyday activities, such as school pickups and drop offs. I didn't leave the house unless it was a necessity. But without skipping a beat, Gavin stepped up to take care of the girls when they were home. He helped me with homework, cooked dinner, cleaned the house, and did the laundry, all while working tirelessly every day to grow his own business in the auto industry to support his family. I already knew Gavin was my soulmate, but his selfless actions proved it during these challenging times. So now I'm going to go to the first appointment. I wanted to start with that rather than just jumping right into my 4-year-old self, because I think it's important for people to understand what survivors go through when they're struggling. And these are often signs that your loved one really needs help and they need someone to step in and be there for them. And sometimes we need someone to be stronger than we are because we're not very strong in that moment. But those are all the negative consequences that I've endured because of the lack of protection from my parents. And so now I want to take you back, and I'm going to start reading from my first therapy appointment, which is where I shared for the first time what happened to me at 4 years old. "Good morning. How are you feeling today?" Gavin asked the morning of my first therapy appointment. "I'm not feeling well. My body aches all over." "Do you remember what happened last night?" Gavin had a concerned look on his face as he opened the blackout curtains to let in some of the morning sun. I sat up in bed, scraping the crust from my eyes. What did I do now? "No, I don't know. What did I do?" Gavin stood in front of the dresser, picking out his outfit for the day. He tossed a t-shirt, pair of jeans, socks, and underwear onto the bed, and then sat next to me, placing his hand on my thigh. "Something triggered you hard, and you sobbed on the bathroom floor for hours. You don't remember anything?" "No, I don't." "Do you remember me hugging you?" "No, I'm sorry, I don't remember that." "I held you tight, hoping to calm you down, but nothing worked. I guess it's a good thing that you have your appointment today. Are you ready?" "Not at all. I'm dreading it. I'm sorry. Hopefully you'll feel better after. Do you want breakfast?" "No, thanks. I'm not hungry." This next part's really difficult for me because it reminds me on that first day that I was going to therapy, what a difficult time that I was having. Um, so I want to skip that part. Sorry. All right, I'm just going to get right to the office part. "So, how can I help you?" Laura spoke softly and patiently waited for a response. I remained quiet and looked over at Gavin, begging him with my eyes to answer for me. So he spoke first. "Yvonne hasn't been doing well." "Oh?" Laura looked at me inquisitively. "How are you feeling, Yvonne?" I sat quietly, feeling overwhelmed with emotion as reality set in, unable to hide the evil secrets I'd lugged around since childhood any longer. "Abandoned," I uttered. "How long have you been feeling this way?" "Since birth." "I'm sorry to hear that, Yvonne." Laura turned her attention back to Gavin. "When did all of this start?" Gavin took a deep breath before speaking. "She's been this way for about 3 months." "Do you know what triggered her current emotional state?" Laura asked. "Well, it started with a phone call from her mom," Gavin tried to explain. Laura turned back to me. "Yvonne, can you tell me what happened during the call?" "Well, my mom suggested popping tents in my backyard for family members to sleep in. But Why would your mom want to do that? Because she didn't think everyone could afford a hotel room. Are you planning an event? We were at the time. We just got married a month ago. Congratulations. I want to hear more about your wedding, but first, can you tell me more about the call? And I told Laura how my mom had called before the wedding, um, and she was concerned that there were family members that couldn't afford a hotel. And I was so stressed out um, because, of course, you're planning a wedding, you want everything to be perfect. Um, and she suggested that people sleep in my backyard in tents. And what really triggered me, though, is during the conversation, I remember her telling me that I had changed. She said, "You've changed since you've been with Gavin." And when she said that, it infuriated me because, yes, I had changed. I wasn't the same person that I was. And I became infuriated, I think, that that made me realize that she hadn't changed at all. And that one phone call set me on this path of healing, on this journey that I'm currently on. And so, if that hadn't happened, I wonder how long I would have continued, you know, being depressed, or I wonder how long I would have continued to keep a fake smile on my face, or, um, I feel like at the time that there was no way that that breakdown wasn't going to happen with or without that phone call. That breakdown of all of these flashbacks were bound to come back. And as you can see, I'm totally stalling because it's really difficult for me to get into. So I think rather than reading, I am just going to speak from my heart because that's going to be the best way for me to just get to it, because with the book, it's easy for me to just keep reading other things and and skipping around it because I want to give context. So, my first memories of abuse, actually, of domestic violence was 3. My first memory is of my father beating my mom and watching her fall backwards into a glass picture that was hanging on her wall and cutting her back all up. So that's my first memory. And from there, it doesn't get any easier or any better. So when I was 4 years old, this is back in 1983, so we're going way back. We lived in a small mobile home park with my mom and dad. And in the same park also lived my dad's uncle, Trevor. And for whatever reason, I was allowed to sleep over at Trevor's house this night. I'm not sure what the circumstances were around it. I don't know if my parents went out or what the deal was. Well, I woke up the next day. The night before, I was nervous because, Trevor had me put on a nightgown, or not a nightgown, but like a t-shirt. And I was nervous because I had a one-piece romper on that I wanted to stay in, and I didn't understand why he wanted me to change. But, you're 4, you change, whatever. So anyway, we go to bed, and the next morning I wake up, and Trevor is performing oral sex on me or raping me orally. At 4 years old, I was shocked. I didn't know what was going on. I was confused. I was scared. I was terrified. And that's actually when I started playing with my ear. Now, those who know me very well know that This is kind of a compulsion that I have. I do this all the time. I sit and I just play with my ears. This compulsion started at 4 because that's what I did to distract myself while this was happening. And I clearly I knew it was wrong immediately, um, and I remember after I guess he was done, he shook me to wake me up, not knowing that I had been awake really the whole time. And the first thing that came to my mind at 4 years old, imagine this, is I have to escape. I have to somehow escape the situation because this clearly is not right. And so I asked him for a glass of milk. And he walked to the kitchen to get the milk, and I kind of tiptoed to the door where the room was and looked out, and I saw him in the kitchen. And right to the right of me, now if anyone knows mobile homes, there's usually a front door and a back door, and the back door was right outside of the bedroom that I was staying in. And so at 4 years old, he brought back a glass of milk, and when he walked to go back to the kitchen, I tiptoed to the back door, hoping that it would be open, and thankfully it was. And I dropped the milk, and I ran for my life, started running for my life to my house, which was only 2 or 3 trailers down. And as I'm running, clearly he must have heard the glass shatter, and he comes behind me, chasing me. He's chasing behind me, and I finally reach the door, my mom's door. And I'm banging on the door. Mama, 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 help me, mama. No answer. He's getting closer to me. He's approaching. Mama, 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 help me. He catches up to me, and he walks right up on the porch, picks me up, and throws me over his shoulder and starts to bring me back to his trailer. And I'm screaming, kicking, doing everything that I can to let anyone know who is around that, hey, this isn't right. I'm not enjoying this. This is not a game. But the most devastating thing that's ever happened to me happened in that moment. Well, I say the most devastating. I say one of the first most devastating things that's happened to me. As Trevor was carrying me away, my mom opened the door. She opened the door, and I put my arms out, and I was screaming, Mama, Mama, help me. And my mom shut the door. She shut the door, and he brought me back. That is the first time that my parents have betrayed me. The first time that I was physically, literally crying out for help, and the door was shut in my face. I can't imagine a 4-year-old child being thrown over a man's shoulder, crying, screaming, help me, and a mom not helping their child. Now, when I didn't tell my mom what happened until I was about 7 years old. And at the time, she said, well, I didn't, she's like, oh, I thought that you guys were just playing around, horsing around. That's why I didn't do anything. And, at 7, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, that's why mom didn't help me. I get it. But as time went on, I started realizing that this was not a isolated incident. And I really learned that between the ages of 8 and 10. After I told my mom what happened at 4, I remember her bringing me to like the school counselor, but she didn't put me in counseling beyond that. There was no regular therapy. I remember a therapist gave us a book about this type of thing, and she maybe read it to me once or twice, but it was never something that was really seemed to be important to her. It's almost as if, and I've said this before, I think that there's a major misconception that kids are so resilient that they can overcome anything, right? And children are resilient. Children can overcome a lot, but not sexual abuse. This is not something that you just overcome. You have to heal. You have to seek therapy. And so I think my mom fell in that line of, oh, she was a kid. She's not even going to remember it when she gets older. And that couldn't be further from the truth. But later on, we moved. And by this time, my mom and my dad had divorced, and my mom was very much in love with someone else. And we moved to a different state. And this is really where my life, it's really where the hell really began for me, because it was just so constant and just, it was like rapid fire. So the next thing that I remember is being 8 years old, and we lived in a neighborhood, and I had found, I'd met a really nice girl at school named Shannon, and I was really excited. I had a friend. I was looking forward to, hopefully staying in this home for longer than a few months, because prior to this, we were very much not stable at all in our living or financial situation. And I mean, we literally moved every 2 or 3 months, my entire childhood. So I, I think I went to 3 or 4 different schools in 5th grade alone, or maybe 2 schools. Anyway, that'll just give you an idea. So we moved to this neighborhood, and one mistake that a lot of parents make, and my parents were very neglectful in this way, and actually it's not a mistake, it's being neglectful. My parents, they would meet neighbors, and, they were fast best friends, and, they meet them one time, and it's like, oh, watch the kids for me. Can you watch the kids for me? Can the kids go to your house or whatever? They didn't really vet the people around them. They didn't really get to know the people that they were bringing their children around. And so as a result, I was around some very dangerous people. And one of those people happened to be my friend Shannon's stepdad. I went to their house after school one day, hoping to spend time with Shannon, and Shannon wasn't home. So her stepdad invited me in and said, hey, you can wait here. So I went in, and he had never said or done anything to me in the past. So I was like, okay. And that's another mistake that people make, by the way, is they trust people until they give them a reason not to trust them. That's how I was raised. You trust people until they give you a reason not to trust them. And really, it's the reverse. You don't trust someone until they give you a reason to trust them. So that's just a side note. But that was the mindset that I had at the time. I trust them until they give me a reason not to. Well, that day he gave me a reason not to. He called me into the room, and when I walked in, he was lying on the bed, and he had his penis out, and he told me to go to the bed, and he made me essentially masturbate him. And I remember when it was all over, I had to wash my hands because it was all over my hand. You can imagine what I mean when I say all over. It was all over my hand. And I remember feeling so scared, but not scared because that had happened to me, but scared that I was going to get in trouble for what just happened. I immediately told myself that it's my fault. I should not have gone there. I shouldn't have stayed. I should have just left. And so when he let me leave, that's something that I decided to keep to myself, because I thought, well, if I tell somebody this, man, I'm going to really get in trouble because I'm the one that went there. In reality is I should have never been allowed to go there. My parents should have known where I was, and they should have said, no, you can't go there, and until we get to know these people and get to know who they are, But the crazy thing about it is, before this even happened, Shannon's 19-year-old brother almost killed me. Now, when I tell you the things happen, it's like rapid fire. The things that I'm about to tell you all happened within months of each other. So the first thing that had happened before this molestation was I was again at Shannon's house, and one thing that my family always struggled with, or my parents always struggled to pay water, electricity, etc. So there were a lot of times that we couldn't take hot showers at our house. So I would go to Shannon's house to take a hot shower. Well, her brother was home one day while I was doing that, and he came in and came into the bathroom and was basically just blocking the door. I was uncomfortable. I'm trying to hide behind the shower curtain, and then I grab a towel and I put the towel around me, and I'm like, let me out of here. And as I walked past him, he tried to jerk the towel off of me. And so I started running through the house, trying to get away from him. He's chasing me, trying to take the towel off of me. And as I run through the kitchen, I have no idea how this even happened. I don't know if maybe I bumped into a table, which knocked a drinking glass off onto the floor, or how it happened, but I ended up falling. And when I fell onto a drinking glass, like a glass. And it cut me so deeply that I was passing out. I was in and out of consciousness. And the scary thing is, I'm thankful that this person even got me help. He ran to my mom and said, hey, something happened. Eve needs help. That's what my family called me when I was a kid, Eve. Eve needs help. She's cut. My mom brings me to the hospital, and I ended up with like 70 or 80 stitches, something like that, in my left thigh. And I bled so much that I was naked. So my mom wrapped me up in a quilt, and I bled so much that it actually went through the quilt. And I don't remember being at the hospital. The only thing that I remember is after that, stopping at a convenience store. And the craziest thing, my mom allowed me to get out of the car and walk into the store to pick out a candy bar. But all I had was a hospital gown and socks. And years later, I think, why would she allow me to get out? Why wouldn't she just say, I'll get whatever you need, you stay here, or better yet, let's just go home, because she just wanted to get me a candy bar for what I had just endured. It's like, no, let me get you home and take care of you. And then just a month or two later, the incident with the stepfather occurred. But it doesn't end there. As I said, my parents didn't really pay attention to who was around us. They would kind of, they would welcome anybody into the fold, regardless of whether they were alcoholics, drug addicts, complete strangers, etc. And one of these incidences was my mom and my stepdad encountered a hitchhiker. And this hitchhiker was panhandling outside of a store, and my mom and my stepdad offered him a place to stay if he would help with groceries, etc. And this is the crazy thing to me, is that they would go so out of their way to help these strangers, but the children underneath their roof needed them more than anybody, and it was like we didn't even matter. So anyway, they bring this hitchhiker home, and he somehow, I don't know the circumstances, but he eventually bought himself a van for him to sleep in, and he was sleeping in the van outside of our house. And one day I was there alone. He was there listening to music in his van, and he invited me to listen to music. I've always loved music, always. I mean, since I can remember, that would always get my attention. That was one thing that, if you want to listen to music, I'm your girl, let's go, but now I know that was just his way to lure me, because once I got to the van, he attacked me. And he was on top of me, and he had a really thick beard, and he smelled of alcohol and cigarette smoke. And it was the most disgusting moment that I can remember, just because of the way he smelled, the way he looked. He was so much older. I mean, I was only 9 or 10 at this time. But he raped me. And when it was over, I ran into my house. There was nobody there to protect me, nobody there to comfort me. And I remember sitting in a corner, balled up in a corner, my knees up against my chest, my arms around my knees, praying that he didn't come in the house and do it again, praying that someone would come home so I wouldn't have to be alone with him. And he eventually left, and it's actually the same day he left and never came back. Now, I never told my parents about these situations, because at that point, it was like, what's the point? What are they going to do? They're not going to do anything about it. They had proven to me that they weren't protecting me. They would, have anybody around me. They would just leave us with anybody. There was no concern for our well-being, our safety. And it just blows me away to see the same behavior repeating right now in my family. It goes to show you that no matter how much work you put into yourself and how much you change, that is not going to change the people around you. The people around you are still going to be who they are. And for a long time, I kept that fake smile. And I said, I'm going to have a good relationship with my mom. I have a great relationship with my mom. I have a great relationship with my dad. And the truth is, that's a lie. I didn't have a great relationship with my mom. I didn't have a great relationship with my dad. I didn't have any relationship at all. My parents had the mindset of out of sight, out of mind. It's literally, if you're not there, you just don't exist to them. And at the time when all of this is going on, I wonder, where in the hell was my mom? Where the fuck was she? What the fuck was she doing? Like, what was so important that you had to leave your daughter with a hitchhiker that you don't even know? The crazy thing about this is I haven't even gotten to the situations where when I did open up and I did speak to my family, that didn't matter. They stayed friends, or, nothing was ever done about it. No one has ever been held accountable for what they've done to me. No one. My mom still to this day defends perpetrators. My mom still to this day expects children to react in adult ways. My mom to this day is not protective. My mom to this day is neglectful. And that's a really difficult thing to admit out loud, because I so wanted to believe that she had changed over these years. I so wanted to believe that when she told me that she would do things differently, she meant it. And for those of you who don't know, in our last podcast, our guest was a 13-year-old girl who was abused by a family member and was dealing with ramifications from speaking out. And what people didn't realize at the time until later on in the show is that that guest was my niece. And the grandmother who had turned her back on her is my mom. And so learning that really has me seeing things in a completely different perspective. It's made me realize that words mean nothing without action behind them. Words mean nothing without the action. My mom, for years, I would do things differently if I could. I would never do the same thing. And here she is doing the same thing. The person who abused my niece is my brother. And my mom has made a stand and said, well, if he's not invited to things, then I'm not coming. So she's picked her side. She's still protecting perpetrators. She's still turning her back on victims. I was really only going to go through until 10 years old, but I'm going to fast forward a little bit, because when I was 13, I was molested by my uncle, my mom's brother. And when I told her, nothing was done. I had to pretend like nothing ever happened. Thanksgiving, he'd be there. We'd all go over for Thanksgiving, everybody hugging his neck, everybody, oh, it's so good to see you. Oh, you're the best. Da, 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 da. While I'm sitting there thinking, he's the best? The man that molested your 13 daughter is the best? Your 13-year-old daughter is the best? The man who not only hurt me, but has turned out had hurt multiple children. He's a good dad? They make comments about, happy Father's Day, happy birthdays, you're the best dad, brother, da 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 da. And here I am. My brother has molested my niece, and I'm infuriated. I can't believe that he's not in jail already. They need to press charges on him. That's what needs to happen. I no longer have a relationship with my brother because of what he did to my niece. How could my mom have continued a relationship with her brother who had done that to her daughter? And so really the whole purpose of me opening up today and digging into my childhood a little bit and to speak about my experiences is because I don't do that very often. A lot of times I focus on other people, and I want everyone to understand that Even if you're healing and even if you're working on yourself, it's not always going to be easy. You're going to be faced with these situations where you realize that you and your family are in two different places and you just no longer fit anymore. And that's okay. That it's okay to stand up and stay true to yourself. You don't have to brush it under the rug. If you are around someone who you know has abused someone else and you are just saying, oh, well, it's not a big deal or what, it is a big deal. It is a big deal. It doesn't matter how little, because we have to, in terms of, trauma and this type of thing, there is no little or big. Trauma, being sexually abused is being sexually abused. It doesn't matter if it was just fondling. It doesn't matter if it went further than that. Abuse is abuse, and we have to stop trying to, really put things in a category about the level of hurt that particular trauma, should cause a person. It's trauma is so complex. It's so complicated and working through all of those complex emotions, you're going to struggle from time to time. I mean, I still struggle. I just want people to know that even though I do this it may seem like I have it all together, I am still just in the healing process, just like you. It's a process. I'm still in this process. And where the process has brought me now is that I no longer have a desire to maintain relationships with people who do not match my same values. My mom is an enabler. End of story. That's just who she is. My brother, she will never turn her back on him. She'll never make sure that he gets the help that he desperately needs. It's so interesting because she says that she's protecting him. She won't let him go to jail for anything. She doesn't want my brother to press charges for what he did to my niece. He is due for another court case in March where he may go to jail. And she's like, my boy's not going to jail. I'm not sending him there so he can go to jail. It's like, woman, people need to be fucking held responsible for the things that they do. We cannot continue to allow perpetrators to just sit there and not be held accountable. Her son molested her granddaughter. She should be pushing for him to be arrested and press charges against, because that is the right thing. That is how you show your support to your loved ones. And she has just failed to do that my entire life. She's failed to do it, and she's failing to do it now, frankly. And I hope what people understand when they hear this is that stop making excuses. Stop making excuses for other people to hurt children. Stop it. If your brother or uncle or grandpa or whomever has hurt children, is that really who you want in your life? Are you really going to continue to bring your children and other children around them and put them at risk? We have to stop. We have to break the cycle of just sweeping things under the rug, especially when it comes to childhood trauma, especially when it comes to sexual abuse. Failure to do so can have very, very, very devastating consequences. I know this personally. Don't do what my mom did. Don't do what my dad did. I say my mom a lot, and that's because at this time my dad wasn't around. He had already abandoned me. So it's also on my dad too. He wasn't there either. It's not just my mom, but because I was under her care, I tend to have a little bit more anger towards her. And you know what? I want everybody to know that that's okay. Kids are allowed to be angry at their parents. It's not the end of the world. And parents have a right to be angry with their children too. But in this situation, it's not really, I'm not just angry with my mom. I'm intolerant. And it's not my mom. I'm intolerant of her behavior, and I won't tolerate it. And I won't allow anybody in my life who holds those distorted, neglectful, manipulative views, people who blame the victims, tell the victims they're lying. That's not what really happened. You just need attention. And I'm going to say it again. Yes. Yes. Children who are abused need attention. And they will do things that scream out, "Help me." And you just have to be willing to listen. Instead of, "Oh, you just want attention. You're just doing that for attention." Isn't that the dumbest thing you ever heard in your life? A kid, a kid, screaming out for attention. Oh, yeah, they need attention. That's the dumbest thing. Of course they need attention. That's why they're doing it. These are your signs, your signals that something's not right with your child if they're doing certain things. So I know this episode may be a little bit all over the place, but it was important for me to share with you, my earliest childhood traumas. Only, not only because I haven't done it before, but it's important because for people to feel safe, telling me their story, they need to hear my story too. They need to know that I've been through this. I know what they're experiencing. I know what they're going through, and I'm here to help. And William, James, thank you so much for joining us. We would love to hear you if you have a story to tell us. I feel a lot of survivors are a little bit hesitant to tell their story, I'm finding. It's a little bit more difficult to find guests than I thought it would be. A lot of people are still reluctant. And so that's why I'm here sharing my story, to show you that no, it's not easy, but it's important. Your story is important. What happened to you is important. You are important. And I know I say that a lot, and I really mean it. What happened to you, the things that you have gone through, you deserve to be heard. Your voice deserves to be heard, no matter what, especially if you didn't have the support that you needed, especially. Because those are the people that are usually silenced the longest, the people that don't have support, no one to turn to. I want to be that person for you all. I want this podcast to be the place where you can just come let it all out, because that's needed. That's a needed part of healing. And I'm just here to remind you that I'm here to provide that platform for you. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining me again today for episode 23. I know it says 24 here, but it's actually episode 23 of Survivor Strong. We will be back in 2 weeks on February 10th at 11 a.m. live right here on Fireside, Facebook and YouTube. And, I would love if anybody has anything that they would like to discuss. We have a few minutes. Is there anybody that would like to add anything to the conversation? I don't see any requests here. That's all right. That's all right. There's always next time, right? So remember, everyone, you got this. We are all in this together. Until next time.